What up, YouTube? This is Victor. You guys know I love boxing, so that's what we're going to talk about today. It's a little bit different. I normally don't talk about news, but I do feel like this news is big because we're talking about Showtime leaving boxing and what it means for boxing, what PBC, Premier Boxing Champion, should do. I'm on break at work, and I felt like this is an important video because I have a lot of thoughts after reading a lot of comments on a lot of Facebook groups that I'm a part of, and people thinking, I think, the wrong thought pattern. So it's huge because Showtime was basically the last remnants of the HBO era. They were in the game for 40 years. My first boxing fight that I can legitimately remember watching was Paulie Malignaggi versus Adrian Broner back when Showtime was popping. Like, that's when my dad introduced me to it. I saw Maidana fight Broner. I saw Malignaggi fight Broner. I saw freaking Eric Taylor fight Broner. So many fights. I mean, Vladimir Klitschko versus Anthony Joshua before DAZN existed. That was on Showtime, and then it became DAZN. I mean, there's a lot of good fights there. Lucas Matisse versus John Molina, and so many others. So, so the question you guys might be wondering is, so what are we talking about here? Why is Showtime leaving boxing a big deal? What should PBC/Al Heyman do? Well, I have thoughts on that. For starters, I've been seeing rumors of this Amazon potential deal with PBC, and I think it's horrible. I think they shouldn't take it. And you might be looking at me like, what's wrong? Well, here's the thing. Amazon is a huge platform, but they're not a market to boxing. When you go to Amazon.com, you're not looking for boxing. You're not looking for differences in that regard, right? When you're going to Amazon, it's for shoes, clothes, the series Invincible, the Lord of the Rings series. I don't think sports. People are going to try to comment back and say, hey, man, but what about the NFL? The NFL's on there. Well, yeah, but the NFL is so big that it could probably survive on its own. It doesn't even need ESPN. That's how big the NFL is. We're talking Americans, man. Most Americans do not give a shit about boxing. You see, me, I'm an exception to that. That's the only sport I give a shit about. But most Americans don't. So what our sport needs, and I think Oscar De La Hoya was saying it on Twitter, was the sport needs consolidation. It's sad to see Showtime go, but this should be a lesson. In order for boxing to survive, at this point, we need Matchroom, Golden Boy, PBC, Top Rank, all to work together. So ideally, what do I think Showtime, or the PBC, I keep saying Showtime, what do I think the PBC should do? I don't think they should take the Amazon deal, if I haven't made that clear. I think it's a horrible choice. I think just because it has a bigger viewer base, it doesn't mean much. And let me give you a couple examples of that. For starters, in case people don't remember, back in 2015, the first show, the PBC inked the deal with NBC, Spike, ESPN, Bounce, Fox TV, CBS. That's 5 different fucking places that they had deals with. PBC on Spike, ESPN, DAZN, no, not DAZN, Spike, ESPN, NBC, CBS, and a bunch of other places. Bounce, like, who the hell watches Bounce? I think one of Tank's first fights was on Bounce TV. I remember because it was a free website, and I watched it. And I wasn't impressed with him. I'm still not, but that's a different story. But my point to that is, just because your name is everywhere, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do good, right? Like, Amazon's huge, but Fox wasn't? Like, you have to realize Fox is Channel 2 in the United States. One of the biggest deals you can land, yet they still failed. Because it's a problem, it's a symptom of a bigger problem. For starters, the matchmaking. The matchmaking when they were on Fox, CBS, NBC was horrible. You had some good fights when it started, like Guerrero versus Thurman and Broner versus Molina as the first main event. But after that, everything just became like Stevenson versus Thompson. Come on, bro. We all knew who was going to win that. Then it became more fights like Caleb Plant versus Mike Lee, the Subway guy. We knew that was going to happen. I remember watching Caleb Plant versus Truex on Fox, and I was like, this is just pointless. But I was watching it because I'm hardcore. Eventually, NBC left. Eventually, even... here's the thing. You know that was bad when on ESPN back when PBC was on there for a couple fights. They had an Abner Mares versus Leo Santa Cruz and a couple like no-name fighters. I know Lara was fighting a no guy, and I remember Teddy Atlas saying it on air because it was Teddy Atlas and it was Joe Tessitore. They're the original commentators for PBC on ESPN. And Teddy said, if you're watching this is gonna be a lame ass fight because it's gonna be uncompetitive. We need better fights on air, and I'll never forget it because Joe looked at him like, bro, what's wrong with you? These are investors. It's better than Friday night fights. And was he wrong? ESPN kicked him to the curb for Top Rank later because Top Rank puts good fights. Now, people are going to be like, but Showtime had such a great year. Right, but what's that year made of, right? We have to think about it this way. Ryan Garcia versus Tank Davis. That is PBC cross the zone, or Golden Boy rather, and that did 1.2 million buys. Bud versus Spence could have been so much bigger if they would have done it earlier. And Canelo versus whoever is always going to do numbers. These big fights that you guys keep wanting to say are big aren't. Wilder versus Fury, that was ESPN cross PBC. Inoue versus the Fulton, ESPN versus PBC. Those are the fights that sell. That's what boxing needs. And going back to the point, like, that's what De La Hoya is saying. We need consolidation. We can't have this shit going everywhere. So if it were up to me, what do I want PBC to do? If Al Heyman watches this video, which would be crazy, I tell him in the face, don't take the Amazon deal. You're just going to fuck yourself like you do with every other deal you did. Whether you're trying to get the most money or you're trying to, rip them off, that's a different story. People like saying Al Heyman's a bad guy. I think he's a smart dude, but I don't know if he's trying to, money launder these guys because they don't know shit about boxing, so they're going to give him money. In my humble opinion, the zone is where they need to go. And let me tell you why. That would be Golden Boy. That would be Matchroom. That would be OTX. That would be MVP. That would be two Canadian promoters, which I don't remember their name off the top of my head, but I do watch their shows. That's 6 people on DAZN already. And PBC. Now imagine this. You have PBC, Matchroom, and Golden Boy. You could get Ryan Garcia versus Rolly on pay-per-view, of course, but the fight is doable. And it would sell big. You can get Conor Benn versus Keith Thurman, or Conor Benn versus Danny Garcia, or Conor Benn versus any of the welterweights. At 154 or at 168 even, you could do Diego Pacheco versus Bekta Bully in the Golden Boy side, or you could do David Pacheco versus David Benavidez, or you could David Pacheco versus David Morrell, or Demetrius Andre comes back to the zone, but he actually has people to fight. And then you have this whole smorgasbord of shit going on. The idea that you want them to go to Amazon or you want them to go to somewhere else that doesn't have Matchroom and Golden Boy is dumb. That is what's killing our sport. This is why when I say Canelo barely... People know him, but it's not like we're saying Pacquiao. It's not like saying Mayweather, right? It's not like people are asking me, what's the schedule for this weekend? You gotta be hardcore to give a shit. So, yeah, in my humble opinion, they shouldn't take the Amazon deal. They should go to DAZN, because I know for a fact, it has been reported, DAZN and Amazon are in a bidding war right now, seeing who gets a PBC. If they're smart, they go to DAZN. Anyways, those are my 3-cent thoughts in the middle of my my break. And, it's nice outside, and I decided to... And there's no one out here to judge me, so yeah, peace. Remember to subscribe. We talk a lot of boxing, normally post-fight things, but today was one of those things where I just had to get my 2 cents into this whole situation, Anyways, peace.